I'm Sarah Nagel. I've spent my career leading research and product development within some of the world's largest brands.
And I'm Chad Reynolds. I'm a serial entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Verve.
And this is AI Powered by People.
Each episode will dive into the latest developments in AI and talk to an industry leader to help you better understand and utilize it.
We'll take you inside some of the world's most famous companies and share examples of how AI is improving innovation, consumer engagement, media, and marketing.
No matter what industry you work in, we're going to help you navigate one of the biggest disruptions to organizations and people today.
Hey Chad, how you doing? What's up?
I'm doing great. We're in planning mode. We'll be at South by Southwest in a few weeks, hopefully podcasting from there. Lots of industry and tech leaders to talk about, AI and impacts on culture, brands, etc. So kind of in the throes of the planning for that. And then also we're launching Community, which will be our kind of mobile experience.
Can you talk a little bit more about Community? Because I don't know if our audience knows what that is.
Yeah, so we've been beta testing a way for consumers, creators to share more of like an inbound way with brands around like new insights, new ideas. Up till now, everybody has been, you get engaged by a brand through like a campaign so that you can collaborate and respond that way. So this will be the first way to open up more of like an inbound channel directly to the brands you like and love and want to share ideas with them in a private way. So it's just a really cool set of features that truly make you feel creative and a part of something. So we're really excited about it.
All right. Well, coming up, we're going to be talking to Rich Ward, who is the Chief Design Officer at Otter.ai, and we'll learn more about that soon. But first, let's talk about what we're seeing in the headlines. Big news this week with OpenAI. They unveiled its text-to-video AI tool called Sora. And I have been checking it out and watching the videos. It seems really fun. Have you had a chance to take a look at the tool yet?
A little bit. So break it down for us.
Sure. It's a text to video tool. So like you're chatting, with ChatGPT or Dolly, you put in, your text prompt. But what comes out of Sora is a 60-second video. And the videos that I've watched are pretty incredible, like adorable. Some of them, there's like adorable with like puppies in the snow. There's woolly mammoths running, and people walking down the street in Japan. But it's the visuals are pretty incredible. I was watching these ones where it was like, this is what we had yesterday, which is like a little glitchy, and this is what we have today, and it was just pretty incredible, the resolution of what you could see.
So is this out for public use, or is this more of like a more of a release demo?
It's not yet. It's available with to experts and artists and filmmakers and policymakers to figure out kind of the proper use for it, because there's been implications about like, what can this do for the election, or kind of like how can we think about this in education or in in Hollywood. So I think there's a lot of people collaborating right now to figure out how to approach this and how to make this available to people. So but pretty cool, pretty insane stuff. All right, up next, we talked about this last week, but in Indonesia, there was an election this week on the 14th on Valentine's Day. Prabowo Subianto claims victory. And why this is interesting is we had talked about it last week, but they had created these images of using Midjourney to put his images across Indonesia, but they were adorable.
They were adorable. 19 billion views on TikTok. And Sarah, at the end of the day, being adorable wins. So
I think that's what we're learning. But pretty interesting, and I think that AI had a big impact on the votes here, especially because half the voters were under 40 in Indonesia, and it was kind of all over TikTok, like you said.
I mean, over 200 million voters are under 40 in Indonesia. I think what was the final tally on the vote? He had around 58%.
58% of the vote. So
it's crazy. So I'm sure there's lots of implications from that, kind of leading into our next story on Anthropic.
Tell us about that.
So Anthropic's taking steps to prevent the misinformation during the U.S. elections. So ahead of our 2024 election period, they are testing new technology to detect when users of Gen AI ask about political topics. And they're going to redirect users to Turbo Vote, a resource from the nonpartisan organization Democracy Works, where they can find up-to-date, accurate voting information. So as opposed to using the chat to come back with potential answers or information isn't correct, they're going to redirect people to a different resource, which is really interesting.
Well, I think that's interesting because, it's really the information that's coming out of the chat tools are really how it's trained. And I think it's great to be able to kind of take it away from kind of that potentially biased training and, redirect to a kind of an unbiased source so people can get correct information. So
yeah, but is that, I guess, is that kicking the can down the road or just deflecting it on, don't ask me any questions about this, just put it off on someone else to figure it out.
Yeah, but I think it's in the right direction where it is where it's kind of going to the unbiased source. I think that and yes, it's unbiased currently, but I think it's just a good next step right now. It's kind of what we can do, but yeah, potentially kicking the can down the road. But I think a good next step for sure. Okay, and then last, Cineverse partners with Google Cloud to launch AI-powered search and discovery tool for film and television content. So Cineverse is a global streaming technology and entertainment company, and it announced CineSearch, which is an AI-powered movie search platform, goal to basically revolutionize how you find the content that you want to watch. They have this artificial intelligence-based tool, so artificial intelligence-based video advisor named Ava, which personifies the tool, which is great. And it will utilize the metadata, so where you are, weather, etc., to be able to recommend what to watch.
Yeah, just what I need, more sad shows.
Do you think that it'll be like, oh, it's raining? And
yeah. Is it going to take me further down the hole? So what shows are you watching right now?
What shows am I watching right now? Oh, actually, I'm watching Girls again, which is kind of crazy. I'm like rewatching old stuff. I've been in like this kick of like rewatching stuff from like the 90s, and now I'm getting into like, the 2000s, but like, yeah, I'm watching older things. I'm also watching like True Detective, but that might be related too, because it's like, it's winter time, like you're in this, like, it feels cold outside. So like it kind of goes along with like the mood that I'm feeling. So maybe
Are you feeling sad? Am I like rubbing off on you?
I've just been listening to Coldplay. Like, I don't know what's happening to me.
Yeah. You're going to have to ask Ava now, like what to do next.
But what I think is interesting about this is, with Google, it's like, it understands your search history and understands where you are, like I said, the weather. But then you think about, like, if you are wearing any sort of, like, tools to connect to your biometrics, like, what will that then say about, like, am I stressed out, or if I'm, I have a lot of energy? I wonder if that will play into, future search.
Yeah, tools. You would hope it would.
Yeah.
To, like, bring people out of a hole. So,
yeah,
that's exciting.
So now let's get to our interview with Rich Ward, who's the Chief Design Officer with Otter.ai, which is a real-time transcription and note-taking application that can join your meetings, and we'll learn a lot more about it. I'm excited to learn more about Otter. They had some new product updates this week that were released, and I love having conversations with Rich. He's an ex-colleague of mine from a consultancy that I worked at, and he's a lovely human being.
Yeah, and I would definitely stick around. So Otter was one of the kind of early OG AI products, and for those listening who are trying to build products that change people's behavior, I think this is a really interesting way to look at, when you launch a product that has that high tension point, what's the experience you can create or the value you can create to get people over that hurdle.
All right. Well, are you ready?
Let's jump.
All right, Rich, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Chad. Great to be here. Excited for the conversation.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. So I think the best way to start is we want to hear a bit about your background. We want to know, you're in San Francisco, although you do not have a San Francisco accent. We would love to hear about your experience and also what led you to Otter.ai.
So you can tell by the accent, I'm originally from the UK. Moved to the States about 15 years ago. Wow, it's gone quickly. Spent my first few years in New York, where I worked for a great company called Smart Design, where Sarah, you and I got to first know each other.
Yes.
It's been a hot second. I then moved West Coast to join Frog Design, where I spent 5 years, learned a ton, met a bunch of good friends, and was there for 5+ years. And then most recently, before joining Otter, I joined a company called MetaLab. In 2017, I was there for 3 or 4 years. And MetaLab was interesting to me for many reasons. One, it was a remote first culture pre-pandemic. So I was kind of interested to feel what that would look like pre-pandemic, and it was pretty interesting. And the other thing that was really interesting to me for MetaLab was we worked pretty much exclusively with founder-led companies, helping them think through that 0 to 1 MVP. So I was excited to dig into that. And final point on them, some of their clients were Slack, Coinbase, Notarize, Uber. So it's good people.
And that's how you found Otter.ai, correct?
They were one of my clients.
Yeah.
So we got to work with them as a client, and I got really enamored with the category, the space, the opportunity, and I really like the founders, Sam and Yun. They're just really good people, super high integrity, technically very proficient, hyper curious. So yeah, and I've been here 2 years and change, and it's been a really good journey.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about Otter.ai? It's more for the listeners to understand kind of what it is, what makes it unique, examples of how people can use it.
Okay, yeah, I'll take each of those in turn. So we're a Series B AI startup based in Silicon Valley. It might be interesting for your listeners to know just kind of some of our investors. David Sheraton, the first check into Google, is an investor. I think we all know who Tim Draper is. He's an investor. And then Horizon Ventures, who led Zoom's Series A and B, are also an investor. So it's a pretty tight investor crew, and they've been very supportive. From day one, and Sam and Ian started the company in 2017, so we've been at this for a while. Their vision from day one, Sarah, was to really record, transcribe, and share all our conversations. So in the same way kind of Google's trying to organize the world's information, we're trying to record and make sense of every conversation you have, which on the surface can sound pretty scary, but having lived on the products and the platform for a few years now, I can tell you it's really beneficial to how I think about my everyday. And we can dig into that over the course of the next few minutes.
So the way that I've experienced Otter is I'm bet on different video calls, and a Otter will sign on. You know, it could be like, Chad's Otter will sign on to record the conversation. And so walk us through the Otter Joins and then kind of what happens after that.
Totally. So we have, we're able to join all the different 3 platforms, be it Zoom, be it Teams, be it Meet. So, and as you join that virtual conversation, your Otter, or we call it Otter Pilot, will join alongside you. Think of him as just, or her on your shoulder. And it joins the conversation in the background, that meeting, and basically just transcribes. So it understands through diarization what I'm saying, what Chad's saying, Sarah, what you're saying. And we have a very high bar and quality for what we call ASR, automatic speech recognition. And just to give that just to put some numbers around that, so we have since 2017 transcribed over 1 billion meetings like this. And those billion meetings transcribe relate into about 50 billion minutes. So we have just a huge, huge data set, which is our proprietary LLM. And so we're able to really perfect that automatic speech recognition and then use the AI and our engineers to really elicit really interesting insights and facts for our users. So that's how it works. It joins these virtual calls. Our first few years of growth was very much on the kind of transcription, and people derived huge value, whether they were a UX researcher, whether they were a student, or whether they were like a knowledge worker. And today, we not only transcribe those conversations, but we give you a summary. So at the end of this conversation, not only will the 3 of us have a transcription, word for word, near perfect, but we'll also have a 30-second gist to a 30-minute meeting, which is, I have found personally in my working day, incredibly helpful just to have that snapshot of a meeting that maybe you had last week.
And is that part of the latest update that was released this week?
Yeah, so we released some features this week. So go check out this podcast or TechCrunch, VentureBeat, Wall Street Journal. So we've launched a bunch of stuff this week. One is the summary. So you'll get that kind of 30-second summary to a 30-minute meeting. The AI will automatically extract action items, decisions, insights. So the idea is that you can be really active and an active listener in the meeting and really participate, because you know that Otter kind of has your back and is transcribing and making all these notes for you, and it's kind of like augmenting kind of your ability to really kind of participate in those meetings in a meaningful way. So yeah, that's something that we're really excited by. I should say that all of our tech is proprietary, right? So we don't use third parties. We have a kind of a, let's call it a chat GPT like prompt in the product. So if maybe Chad, you joined this meeting 10 minutes late, you could just be like, hey, Otter, catch me up. And it'll give you a little snippet of the 10-minute conversation that Sarah and I had before the meeting. Or say at the end of this meeting, I could say, hey, write me a thank you follow-up note and send it to Chad and Sarah, and Otter will do that on my behalf. So it's super powerful at both an individual level, we think at a team level, and then like ultimately at an enterprise level.
Sarah mentioned like she remembers the first time like an otter attended a meeting. In a very similar way, I did as well. You know, for the people who've kind of gone through that experience, you know, sometimes it's jarring, different. You can kind of like feel a lot of different emotions, and I think as you know, someone who understands experiences maybe a little too well, I'm curious how you've seen people overcome maybe some of those barriers for adoption.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and from day one, and we're trying to build a new category here, right? And change behavior, and that's really hard and takes time. So we're in this for the long haul. We're 7 years in, but we still very much feel we're at the starting line, honestly. And there was a bit of a oh fuck moment for me in like November 30th, 2022, when ChatGPT launched on the world. But actually, it's been just a huge benefit to us because it's helped humanize what AI can be. And I think people have played with it and have learned that it isn't this scary thing. And actually, if you lean into it and you embrace it, it can actually be super helpful. And so actually other companies coming into this space and bringing other like use cases and bringing people in has really helped, I think, humanize and just allow people to play with it without feeling scared of it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were definitely one of the OGs in this space around like the idea of a companion that would do things for you, and just curious like how that's contributed to just some of the growth for users through the different stages of the company. Where you had your early adopters, and now you're launching really interesting features that can really help you be much more hyper productive.
Like I mentioned, we're still pretty small. We're Series B, right? So we're 100 plus people, and we're trying to take the fight to these like $1 trillion tech giants. So we get humbled every day, but we take big swings and we try. But I think when I look at, we have now 14 million subscribers on our platform, which is a good chunk of people.
That's a lot of meetings.
Yeah, it's a lot of meetings.
A lot of meetings,
and a lot of people deriving value from those meetings. Like if I take my own workflow, like I've now reduced, like genuinely reduced the number of meetings I go to by more than 30%. And why is that? It's because I send Otter to those meetings on my behalf, and it joins those. It says to me, "Hey, Rich, like this meeting on a Thursday, you're not really that active as a participant. Why don't I go on your behalf and get that hour back?" And so I have meetings in my calendar that I just don't go to. Right. And I derive as much value because I get a summary, I get my team's action items, I get that all serviced up to me in a really intuitive, simple way, and it gives me 30% of my week back. Like you extrapolate that out to, a company with 1,000 employees, 100,000 employees, it's hugely valuable, and it allows me not only to get my time back, but to use that time more productively on more interesting, bigger, meatier problems that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, and obviously I wouldn't say the primary use case, or you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess is the primary use case around more of a B2B user, but I would see you could use this through your social experience in a ton of different ways. So curious if you could talk about some of those some of those use cases that maybe aren't necessarily top of mind for people of how this
Totally.
could fit into your life.
So as you'd expect, we have iOS, Android app. So like you can just be out walking your dog, right, and throw on Otter in the background and start talking about like your ideas of the day, or maybe you've got a thesis for a book, or like just a way of capturing your thoughts in a really allowing you to have a really kind of unstructured conversation with Otter,
Mm-hmm.
and then allowing Otter to like make sense of that. So I can talk to Otter for 2 hours, ask it to summarize those 2 hours in 100 words, and I have an abstract, right? That's incredibly powerful in the individual use case. Sarah would know this well, but maybe one of my team on the UX research team is talking to someone around like different personas or use cases or workflows, and in that conversation, Otter can be listening in the background and making sense and pulling out insights and themes to give that UX researcher like a starting point to work from. So it's definitely not there to replace humans. It's
Right.
there to augment and support and accelerate their productivity and hopefully have some fun with it as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things when you're saying you can have the Otter essentially like sitting on your shoulder, right? And you saw obviously at like CES some different physical devices have started to pop up with like Rabbit and Humane and others. Have you explored just kind of what is it like if Otter was a physical experience, like what might it be like? Because I can picture a little otter in my desk, as cute as it might be, but also like sending it into spaces or things like that. It kind of has these built-in personifications already, just around the brand.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, we haven't yet, right? We're still small, and we've got enough on our roadmap to get after. But I think one of our provocations, at least here at Otter, is most AI tools, most productivity tools, honestly, they're fairly utilitarian, right? There's not a lot of warmth to them. If I think down the line, like just like Google, Confluence, like they're just they're there to do a job, but I don't derive any value. I don't derive any joy or any love out of those products, really. And we intentionally called the company Otter because Otters are smart, but they're also there's a warmth there, right? And I think we really want to lean into that ability to bring some warmth, some humanity to what is a pretty can be a pretty scary thing called AI. So and do it in a really kind of genuine, authentic way. And I think to your question, we have these little like Otter mascots, right, that we give to candidates that we're hiring and the like. And when we talk to journalists, we smother them with swag. So could I imagine a world where there's a physical device in the meeting room that replaces Zoom rooms and it's Otter? Yeah, absolutely I can.
Yeah. I'd love to prototype it with you. So whenever,
all right,
I've got like all kinds of little Christmas ornaments that I can turn into, all these little characters. I can imagine it just coming to life, and
it'd be adorable.
It would be adorable.
I mean, we use Bonusly as like the kind of like, and every time we Bonusly someone, they get a 3D printed like little otter, right? We call it Ottie. So very cute.
So
you didn't know it was going to turn into a cute episode.
I didn't, but this is working. This is working for me. This is great.
So Otter's listening, it's taking notes, it's summarizing, it's able to kind of like take the conversations you're having or the thoughts that you're having and kind of help you pull it all together or give you suggestions about what's next. You can imagine, I know that Chad touched about this a little bit, that there may be some anxiety around collecting that information. So how do you, as a company, ease that anxiety around kind of the AI collecting that information to be able to, and also protect those conversations or those thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is kudos to people that predated me, but privacy and security has been DNA de facto from day one. We are, with people's consent, but we are recording sometimes really intimate thoughts and conversations, right? And so we take it extremely seriously to kind of protect their data and go to exhaustive lengths to do that, honestly. So one would expect us to be SOC 2 compliant, and of course we are. We have independent auditors to like look at all of that and get sign off. People's data is stored in a very secure cloud with super high security standards. We do not have access to audio recordings unless people give explicit kind of like okay for that. So yeah, we just take it super seriously. And if we don't, and there's a breach, it's going to really hurt us, right? It's going to really hurt our users. And so we have to build that trust with the 14 million people that have trusted their conversations with us, and just be really thoughtful about that. And like genuinely, we do.
Yeah, I mean, I love the I don't know, just the idea of like creating almost like an AI that is a product of all the meetings that I was a part of, right? I mean, often you need like provocations in order to say maybe smart or not so smart things. You know, your email might be a reflection of, you know, discussions, conversations you're having. Meetings are obviously much more focused on particular objectives, and especially when you extrapolate those across an entire, you know, year or multiple years, they would have a pretty good idea of who you are, what you cared about, you know, all those types of things. I'm curious, like, kind of where does this go?
Yeah, I don't think we'll get this. I don't think we'll launch it this year, but I can imagine soon after. Imagine a world in which Otter has been able to like really understand how Richard thinks and the types of answers he would give to the types of questions, because Otter has been on my shoulder for many years, listening to how I think and how I answer questions repeatedly. And so I think it's a fairly realistic expectation to in the future that I don't go to a meeting and Otter goes on my behalf and answers questions and contributes in a meeting through Otter, but answering on behalf of Richard. And maybe even like, Sarah, you don't even have to go and you send your Otter, right? And we've got these two Otters talking to each other, but representing two people. It's a little out there, but I could totally imagine a world in where Otter has a really visceral, authentic sense of like who I am, how I think, and how I want to like represent myself in a conversation, and be able to do that without me even being in the room.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's useful and valuable and not scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely is. And I think you're going to have to experience it, but maybe like the first time you took an Uber, right? There was a lot of, or you slept in a stranger's bed.
Yeah.
On Airbnb. Let me clarify.
Where are we going with this?
Yeah. You know, there were these behaviors that are ingrained in you, but then you had to see the value. You had to go through that experience to see the value, and then you're like, all right, that was I like that.
And I think where we get excited, I mean, we have deep respect for companies like Anthropic, Gemini, OpenAI. I mean, these guys are killing it. They're doing a great job. I think our hypothesis and our point of like differentiation and technical moat is that those companies are essentially scraping the internet for words. And that's how they're building their data set. We've built ours based on the spoken word, so a large spoken language model, and that's just very different. You've got to think like they're much more unstructured conversations. And so if we can lean into that, I think, and then we can untap something, I think, quite different, and think about your experience in Otter as more voice first rather than text first. We think there's a real kind of unlock there, and allow people to like to talk to one another, to colleagues, to friends, partners, like on Otter, and let Otter really kind of like understand you at a more of a human level, rather than just scraping a bunch of fairly generic content off the internet.
Yeah, I mean, in a similar way, I mean, you're maybe at different stages from the startup, you know, startup phases or series, you know, where you're recording kind of the closed room conversation. So if Google's capturing kind of the public internet, all the data's out there, and being trained on kind of like, you know, just kind of what's out and open, you know, you're training it on the closed room conversation where it gets much more intimate. And then, you know, like we're also training ours on just the single conversation. So just kind of like prompts from like the one-on-one. So it's just kind of interesting parallels. But I'm curious, like, you know, what was, you know, when you joined, you obviously had experience with MetaLab, you had kind of a steep history on the kind of design consultancy and experiences and all those kinds of things. But just curious what things you're seeing from a trend perspective that, you know, maybe our listeners should be, you know, just listening to the signals too, just like as you're seeing things develop in these spaces, like what are things that are exciting to you that that you're seeing?
I would say I'm I'm an optimistic person. Cyril, I'm a glass half full, so I see the best
That's
in
not
the
what you
world.
said before we got on here. Come on.
Oh, come on.
He's gonna be really hard.
No.
Um, so I'm very optimistic about kind of where we are and the path ahead. I would characterize it, and these are other people's thoughts, not mine. I just agree, I tend to agree with them that we've had this kind of we had the wave of the internet, we had the wave of mobile, and now we have the wave for AI. We're in this kind of third wave, and I think a lot of people have characterized it as kind of like an iPhone moment for AI, and that deeply resonates with me. It's a kind of transformational kind of moment in society, and I think whenever I talk to people, I just say, just lean in, like just start using it. Like 2 years ago, I stopped using kind of Google as my browser, and I went straight to ChatGPT. Right, I
Hmm.
forced myself a new behavior. I would encourage people like use Notion and like pay the extra $8 and use their AI functionality. It's really good. It's
Yeah.
really helpful. Do the same with Loom, right? The summaries and stuff you get out of Loom and the engagement metrics, it's really good. So I would offer to people and your listeners, just try and bring it into your daily workflow, and I promise you, you'll be pleasantly surprised with how it helps you just be better at your job, and take away a lot of the more admin type parts of the job to give you back time to really think more deeply about more interesting things. That's at least my personal experience. So I'd say, we're on that third wave. One person's opinion, I believe that AI will not only be as big as mobile or internet, I think it'll be bigger. I really do.
Hmm. Yep.
And I think the characterization of like an iPhone moment and a platform play is really interesting. And we see this in the industry, right? I mean, whether I'm a small startup or a Fortune 100 company, if you don't have AI central to your strategy, you're dead on
Good
arrival.
luck. Yep.
Honestly,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
good luck. I mean, and I don't see it as a kind of like a replacement of human capital in people. I see it as a kind of like as a plus one.
Hmm.
So you guys are you started in the kind of in the workplace and also in education. How do you see AI transforming job roles? You talked about kind of this is a plus one, but how do you
Mm-hmm.
imagine this transforming people's jobs in the future, and what will those look like? Because I know that I guess this is going back to the anxiety. People have a lot of anxiety around kind of, will this take my job? What will this look like? But how do you imagine it evolving people's roles, using tools like Otter AI?
Well, I don't think it's going to replace people. And that's the first thing to say. I think we may need to train people in like different tools, right, and give them the training to like embrace and leverage this new technology. Um, but the iPhone didn't replace people, the internet didn't replace people, right? And so I would apply the same logic to AI, that it's just going to help us, if applied correctly and in the right way, it's going to help society be better. Hopefully, it helps connect people. Like a lot of people spend a lot of time on their own, just at home on screens, not connecting with people, not connecting with broader society. I would love tools like AI to bring us closer together, quite frankly. And so when we're on a call like this, I don't have my head like down writing notes on a pen and paper, but I'm actually actively listening. I'm talking to one of them. I'm genuinely hearing what you're saying. And I think if AI can play that role and actually a little bit like bring society back together again, and so we're talking to each other, not past each other, that can only be good. So I don't, like I said, I'm half glass full. I don't see it as like this scary kind of like AI elephant in the room. It has to be applied appropriately and correctly. And that's a little bit why I go back to joining Otter and just the integrity of like Sam and Ewan as founders. I really think that they're really putting the hard work and the deep thinking into how this thing is actually going to turn up as a net positive in people's lives rather than just tech for tech's sake, which is often the case with like startups in the valley, right?
Hmm. And so, what other possibilities do you see? Because you were talking about kind of, you can walk down the street and you can talk to your otter. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I see applications like in therapy in a way too, like, through like having multiple people, or even education. Where else do you see Otter being applied?
Sure. So to date, we've just been trying to get the message out to everyone, and I think we certainly have Otter fanatics, people that like us and love us.
What do you call
Um,
them?
we call them Otter fanatics.
All right.
Um,
We'll come up with a
and
name
She was
later.
hoping for like a really cute name, but
Get a
like,
team
you
name
got nothing.
on this
all
cute
right,
train that we're on.
work to do. So we've been trying to get the message out, and I think people are people are largely digging it, which is super cool to hear. And they give us candid feedback, which is also great. Like, here's how you can need to improve stuff, and we're very open to that. Obviously, I think where we've seen really good product market fit, to your question, Sarah, is education. So students in lecture halls, just having Otter record the lecture and just be able to provide really useful kind of insights. And like, if the lecturer says, hey, this is really important, like Otter's going to pick up on that and serve it back to the student, right? And that's not as a cheat sheet, it's just to help them be a better student, right? And then our hope and definitely what we're seeing is that they're seeing huge value like at college, and then they bring Otter into the workspace. And I've been using this thing for 2 or 3 years. It's helped me be a much better student. It's helped me get better grades. It's helped me a whole magnitude of things. Why wouldn't I want this in my workspace, in my workplace? So that's been a really interesting place for us. We another thinking about different verticals. There's a lot of appetite we're hearing from sales leaders. And so imagine I'm a sales leader and my team, like 20, 30 people, and they're all doing kind of sales calls and qualification calls. As a sales leader, I can just ask Otter, hey, of all the 20 meetings this week, kind of like, what's the sentiment analysis across all my meetings? Chad's telling me that this deal's going to close on Tuesday. Hey, Otter, is full of BS, or is this thing actually going to close? Right, and so
you have like a BS meter
BS
inside of
filter,
Otter?
yeah.
Man.
So I think sales is an obvious use case. We think healthcare would be incredibly valuable. Imagine all the times that you've been talking to a physician or something. You don't really understand what he or she is saying, but you kind of feel a little stupid to ask the naive questions. Well, in this instance, Otter can just be there with you, right? Just recording that conversation, and then when you come home or you're in the cab on the way home, you can just ask Otter to catch you up, right? And like, hey, what does that really mean? It also is an accurate depiction of the conversation, right? There's no interpretation. This is what they said. This is what I think. And then there's a whole bunch of other verticals that I think we'll get after in the coming kind of months and years ahead. But professional services, huge industry, right? So, like I said earlier, we've made some progress, but we still very much feel like we're at the starting line, and we've got a ton of work ahead of us.
So where can we listen along and and find out more about you?
We'll go to Otter.ai and download the product. It's free to use, so you can sign up and start using it today. And my email is richard@otter.ai. So if you have good feedback, bad feedback, or different feedback, shoot it over. And we appreciate everyone listening, and hopefully have a play, and hopefully you enjoy the product.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Richard.
Chad, Sarah, an absolute pleasure.
Hey, Chad, that was a great interview. What are your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, Rich is great. I always find it fascinating when companies are creating products that are transforming or changing people's behaviors. What are what's the value you have to create to get people over that barrier? And then once they're there, it becomes a habit. So it's interesting to see that and see hear some of the features that they're rolling out, where you can start to talk to past meetings and things like that, and some of even the similarities with what we're doing, but they're doing it for kind of the workplace, or even just to use in your pocket to replace like Evernote or things like that. So it was cool. What about you?
Yeah, I like to, I think that when he like double clicked on kind of protecting the information, because I know a lot of people are concerned about, I'm having all of these conversations and they're collecting all of that. What are they doing with it? So I think that, that they, uphold privacy and, protecting that information. I think that it was just a really good thing to hear, because it is a really cool tool and can be very helpful and help you save time and, summarize the conversations that you're having. So I think it's great, and I'm excited to explore it a bit more.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of AI Powered by People. This show is produced by Steve Berkowitz and brought to you by Verve. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Tuesday.